I have this rewrite I did on the song Floating Bridge by Gregg Allman of the Allman Brothers Band. Anyway, I've just come back from a 3-month trip back home to Australia in the months of May, June, and July 2017. But before that trip, I came across a program that was an interview by Dan Rathers with this Gregg Allman of the Allman Brothers Band. And I hadn't heard of Gregg or the band, being out of it and naive and all. So my ears were fresh, and it was a great ride. They started off in this autobiographical question and answer to and from Gregg with the loss of their father when they were just young boys, very young, and by murder. Their father was murdered, so that was wild. And how their mother raised the boys with integrity single-handedly. So it was a great salute there. And in their late teens, they fell deeply in love with guitars and playing, and they had talent, so they were developing. And the oldest brother, I forget his name, had the great idea of forming the Allman Brothers Band. And so Gregg, a little reluctant, went with the program. And they got well on their feet and notoriety, and finally were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the such. But prior to that, with drugs and alcohol and that lifestyle, the oldest brother died in a motorcycle accident. And then they lost another member of the band. So anyway, things were being pruned out, and Gregg decided to keep the legacy going of the Allman Brothers Band. And so he did. But anyway, he wasn't doing well himself. He had had multiple marriages with different gals. He was married to Cher, of Sonny and Cher, for a while. Anyway, Gregg was a Georgian boy from Georgia, from the South, and he was connected with these city gals, and it was quite an unequally yoked. But anyway, he took full responsibility for the loss of those relationships. He got into his struggle with alcohol, and how he had had multiple seasons of rehab that were failing. And he was so disgusted with himself, he finally called on God for help, just at the end of his rope, which is the best place to pray. Anyway, he said, I guess he did. That is, help him. And anyway, it's all in the tone of his voice. So fast forward, I go back to Australia, and I'm sharing this with my friend Ralph Lowe, who also passed on by his battle with cancer in the month of July 2017. But anyway, Ralph opened me up to this Floating Bridge song, and I wanted to play it at his memorial service, but didn't have this chance, so we'll try to do it now. Well, I never will forget that floating bridge. I never will forget that floating bridge. I never will forget that old floating bridge where they tell me 5 minutes underwater I was hid. As I was going down, throwed up my hands. When I was going down, throwed up my hands. As I was going down, I throwed up my hands, thinking, please, Lord, get me safely back to dry land. All the people on the bridge was a-screaming and a-crying, panic-stricken. All the people on the bridge was a-screaming and a-crying, with no ability to save me from this watery grave. They could but pray, have mercy on his soul. As I was blacking out, I heard the echo of my mother saying, my firstborn son, don't play the bum. Mama told me to, little Gregg, don't you play the bum. Go out somewhere yonder, boys. Make some bread or crumbs, but don't ever let me catch you two playing the bum. Now, I did pass out, I think. And somewhere in the meantime, they dragged me out of the water and pulled me up the bank. Yeah, they dragged me out of the water and pulled me up the bank. Dragged me out like a soggy dog up that slick steep bank. I was full of a gallon of the muddy water I had drank. Then they carried me to a neighbor and they laid me on his bed. Yeah, they carried me to the neighbor, laid me on his soft, warm feather bed. To some he was a nobody, but to me he was a friend, like Mama used to read about that good Samaritan. Well, I never will forget that floating bridge. No, I never will forget that floating bridge. I never will forget that old floating bridge where some tell me 5 to 10 minutes underwater I was hid from the flesh, but not from him.